Welcome to Mobilized for Missions, the podcast for people who want to help, not harm. We're building a community that chooses bridges over barriers, unity over division, and action over apathy. This is a tribe that keeps learning, growing, and overcoming the obstacles that keep us from being ready to make a real impact. If your heart beats for the world and your mission is Jesus, you're in the right place. It's time to get mobilized for missions.
Hey, it's Jack Eason. Thank you for joining us for today's Cups Mission podcast. So glad that you are here. We are trying to develop a community that helps one another, doesn't harm each other. We build bridges, right, instead of barriers. Why? Because we want to impact our community with the gospel of Jesus Christ and change our culture. And so I want to encourage you to spread the word. One of the great things you can do is you can share this podcast on your social media so we can grow our community together. You can also rate us, which would help us show up even more. It means the world to us if you could do that. And hey, we want to jump right in. I know your time is valuable. Today we're going to be talking about how we protect the vulnerable. That is one of the staples of Cups Mission, how we do that with putting justice and compassion together. We live in a culture right now that's talking a lot about justice, and you hear the term social justice. What does that mean? How do we do it? The reality is this: some topics are very uncomfortable to talk about. And when people ask us about what we're doing on the ground with Cups Mission, obviously, if you've been a long-time family member or listened a lot, you know that our goal is to rescue a child, transform a family, and then do it again tomorrow. What we're talking about are things like exploitation, things like trafficking, things like abuse. Those are very uncomfortable words to talk about. But the reality is Scripture actually talks about it. Scripture is not silent when it comes to things about injustice. And so the church can't be silent either. We've got to speak up and do our part. So today we want to talk about how do we do that? How do we protect the vulnerable? Not from outrage, but from obedience. You see a lot of outrage on social media, but not a lot of calm responses that are proactive in obeying God. And Isaiah says it this way. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17, God commands us. He says, seek justice, correct oppression, and bring justice to the fatherless. It's not a suggestion, but it is a covenant of obedience. And if you think about what Jesus said in the New Testament, in the book of Luke, he actually quoted Isaiah. He says, he has sent me to proclaim freedom from the captives, freedom for the captives, and to make a difference. Jesus is actually talking about liberation. And so this intersection that Isaiah talks about and that Jesus talks about is really important. And of course, we know that Jesus, the master communicator, embodied that in its reality. Justice is not a distraction from the gospel. It actually is evidence of the gospel. So we want to talk about that today and actually how that happens, what it looks like, the reality, at least in the places where Cups Mission serves, like the Dominican Republic and Malawi. So let me give you a statistic to kind of wrap your head around this idea. According to a 2023 U.S. State Department report, the trafficking in persons, they actually have a report that measures and numbers people who have been trafficked. It's kind of crazy, right? According to this report, Malawi enforces a Trafficking Persons Act. That's kind of the legislation that they have in the country of Malawi. And here is the crazy thing. There are penalties up to 21 years in cases involving child victimization. So here's what that tells me. The fact that there's a law in the books, and there's some similar laws in North America, the United States, but it tells me that vulnerability exists. So we know that vulnerability exists or there wouldn't be these laws in place. It also tells me that the legal framework that's there actually needs strengthening, because if this is still happening and yet there are laws in place to prevent or try to deter people from practicing these types of things, the legal frameworks are not enough, right? And in regions where the poverty is high, like in Malawi, Africa, other countries in Africa, in the third world, Dominican Republic, then the vulnerability actually increases exponentially. And so when 75% of the population in some of these areas are living under this extreme poverty, then desperation becomes exploitable. If you've been a Cups family member for a while, you know the story of Joanne, the Haitian refugee that came across the border looking for family members in the Dominican. Her goal was not, oh, I want to become a prostitute, I want to become exploited, but because of her vulnerability, and because of her being hungry, that is what resulted. And here is what is scary. Traffickers prey on that. We know that. They prey on economic hardship. They prey on people who have a lack of education. They prey on family instability. And so as the church, as a follower of Jesus, we have to have a response and have to have a game plan. So let's talk about what that can be, because it's much better to have prevention over performance. And one of the great things that we say at CUPS often is we want to be proactive, not reactive. Prevention often matters much more than the rescue headlines. There's a great movie that was about rescuing called Sound of Freedom, about rescuing people that have been victimized with the traffickers. That's great. That's awesome. Needs to happen. But what would be even better than that is actually preventing that in the first place. And that's what CUPS is really near and dear to our heart. And so the way that we do that is we keep kids in school. For example, in the Dominican Republic, in the village of La Union Abajo, there is a school there called Asher School where Partners for CUPS Mission actually make sure kids get an education and they go to school there. We work on strengthening the families economically. We're helping train communities through the community leaders and the CUPS missionaries on the ground to actually spot those people who would perhaps be grooming kids into that kind of behavior. And so all that is important. Why? Because Scripture speaks very clearly to what we're supposed to do as followers of Jesus to prevent that. David the psalmist says it this way in Psalm 82, defend the weak and defend the fatherless, rescue the weak and the needy. Now, I'll just be honest. I have a lot of friends who know me who say, hey, you guys talk about rescuing kids. Isn't that really melodramatic? Isn't that just a overdone word? Are you kind of just, is that word really true? If you look up the word rescue on Google or in the dictionary, old school dictionary, you'll find that rescue says to free from harm or danger. And I think that's exactly what's happening, not only with CUPS, but other organizations that are on the ground trying to defend the weak and the fatherless and rescue the weak and the needy, straight from the book of Psalm that David says there in Psalm 82. So our defense is we want to be proactive. Rescue is reactive. So we want to do both. But if we can teach these kids, give them a life skill and help them learn the things that they need to not be lured into human trafficking, then that's when healthy mission actually makes a big difference. So let's talk about that when it comes to discipleship. Because if you know that kids have been seeing these things, or maybe they've had relatives, maybe parents who have been exploited, then you can't just rescue kids. You actually have to restore them. You actually have to help them have a full, holistic view of what it means to follow Jesus. And some of the people who have been involved in these things, CUPS specifically is not too much involved in this type of ministry, but when you're rescuing survivors who have been exploited, young girls who have already been on the streets, they're going to need some things. And the church is great about talking sometimes about rescuing kids and young ladies and young guys who've been in this, but it's very difficult because they're going to need some things. They're going to need things like safe housing. They're going to need counseling. They're going to need relationships. They may need spiritual care. And all that, again, based on Scripture. Micah 6:8 says this, to act justly and love mercy and walk humbly with our God. That should be our goal. And doing that in humility, especially as you talk about survivors of trafficking. Hey, we're not heroes at CUPS Mission. We're just trying to do our part and be companions in healing as we try to make a difference in the lives of these kids. And you're a part of that if you're a part of our team today. So, hey, as we wrap up, just would love to share with you how I'm praying when I think about how we move forward with justice and compassion. Maybe this could be your prayer today. Something like this. I'm praying, God, give me courage to confront injustice. It's difficult in our world that we live in, right? Lord, would you give me gentleness to people who have been exploited? And believe it or not, you probably know this if you've been a longtime CUPS family member, there is exploitation happening around the globe, not just in the third world, more prevalent in the third world, but even maybe in your community. And so ask the Lord to give you eyes to see those things and to be the church. You be the church and be the part that can provide safety and help and a haven for those type of people. Hey, if this message has resonated with you, if this has helped you, would you please share it with a friend? It would mean the world to us if you could share this on your social media and spread the word for our family and help us be able to impact more people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. It would mean a lot. Hey, and if you could rate it, would be even better. So if you could get in touch with us through our social media channels, we would love to continue to share with you ways we can impact our culture for Christ. We'll see you next time. God bless.
Thanks for being part of Mobilized for Missions. If this conversation encouraged you, help us grow the community. Share this episode, rate the podcast, and invite others into the mission. Then head to cupsmission.com and download the conversation sheet, an easy outline you can use with your small group, business team, or anywhere you gather. Let's keep learning, taking action, and getting ready to make an impact for Jesus. Until next time, stay mobilized for mission.